Hey guys, it's Oberstadt. So, welcome to the first episode of Real Talk with Rebecca. Today we're going to be discussing strokes. I have had a few things come in. I've got like a list of probably like 8 things so far that people have asked me to talk about. And since this one not only hits very close to home, but it is it's something that my friend is going through right now and has been for several months. I figured that this was probably the best topic for me to start off with. So if you are interested in learning more about strokes, me discussing my own personal experience and then some general information about them, as well as discussing my friend Amanda's current health situation, then keep watching. When Amanda commented on my video and she was like, I guess I need to put some groundwork out there. I have a friend Amanda who is from Canada, and if I talk about her, it'll be Canadian Amanda, and the other one is my friend Amanda who lives in the Carolinas. So usually that's who I'm going to refer to. I have talked about her in other videos. I have talked about some of her health concerns in other videos and how scared I was for her and how I felt about that. So it's not like it's the first time I've talked about her on my channel. So if you are curious, I did a live stream, I think Chit Chat Get Ready With Me, and I mentioned her in that. I've talked about her in some previous videos. So, you know, it's not like I haven't spoken about her before. When she first said, she commented on the video that she was excited for this new series, and I was like, well, you just volunteered yourself to give me a topic. And we got talking, and she was like, well, what about talking about mental health or depression or menopausal conditions or postpartum kind of conditions? And I was like, every one of those is going to get this video instantly demonetized. I can't, unless I do like different words for those things, and I might have to come up with like a petty page type system where I use like a glossary of terms and make a Google document that has like, if I say, you know, something and use the word, but it means, you know, mental health or things like that. So because YouTube is so very strict, just me talking about fibromyalgia has gotten my videos demonetized, like seriously quick and in a hurry. So we're gonna have to come up with some like terms, and if you guys have some suggestions, leave them in the comments below. But I have a whole bunch of topics that people have asked me to talk about, and I do have a list started. But one, it's currently, let's see what time it is, 8:30 in the morning. I was like falling asleep about 8 o'clock last night. I knew I had to go to Walmart, go grocery shopping, and I drank a cup of coffee, and by 9 o'clock I'm sitting there at my keyboard doing this. And my dad's like, just go to bed. So I set my alarm for 3. I went to bed, watched a little bit of YouTube, always do, and then fell asleep, woke up about 2:30 starving. I'm like, okay. So I went and I got some lunch meat and a cupcake and a glass of ice water and came back and laid in bed and watched YouTube until my alarm went off at 3. And then I crawled out of bed and gathered trash and cleaned the kitchen and loaded the dishwasher and ran it and bagged up trash for Dad since it's trash day, and did a makeup look, which is what I'm wearing right now. And then I went to Walmart, did grocery shopping, came home, put it away. And then Amanda and I started talking, and she's having a really rough time right now. And she just went to bed about half an hour ago. So I had her double check the information that I had. I asked her some specific questions, and I have 4 pages of stuff that I have already typed up. Now, this is my story and her story on these documents, and I do have reference links. I will be turning this into a blog. And so I was like, I wanted to make sure all of my information that I had on her was accurate. So we had some repartee, some witty repartee back and forth. And so that's where we're at right now, to catch you up to what's going on with my day. Now, to get into this topic, I had some issues writing my part. Now, some of it is because I don't remember a lot of it. Some of it is I had to pull out a couple of boxes and go through medical documents. When it comes to discussing medications, I don't think I'm going to be doing that because every person is different and I'm allergic to a lot of things. So I won't be discussing that. And there's a few things I didn't type up in here that had just come to mind that I will probably talk about. So, strokes. What are they? What is a stroke? Well, basically it's brain death. Simplest answer I can give you. But according to this, and everything will be linked down in the description box as far as like reference links and the blog post that I wrote, which will also have the reference links on it. So according to WebMD, which is not the only source that I pulled, it says, have you learned that someone you care about had a stroke? Don't jump to conclusions about how it will affect him. Why it has to be a him, I don't know, because I know more women that have had stroke than men. Not all strokes are created equal. There are 3 major kinds with different warning signs and symptoms. All types have one thing in common: a loss of blood to a part of your brain. Again, brain death. That causes big problems. Your brain cells need oxygen that's carried to your blood, and so when a stroke cuts the supply, some of the cells start to die. Again, what I said, brain death. And it sets off trouble like memory loss, confusion, and numbness on one side of your body. There are 2 main types of strokes. We have ischemic and hemorrhagic. If you have signs of any of them, call 911 right away. The sooner you get treatment, the less likely you are to have long-term effects. And that's not always accurate, but it also has to do with how determined you are to get over your stroke. All right, so general synopsis of a stroke, like I said, brain death. It is where your brain, it's like, you know when you don't have enough oxygen and you have brain death? That's a type of stroke. Other types of stroke can be caused by an aneurysm, which is a blockage or a blood clot in an artery, not a vein, where you have blood flow that is not circulating the way it should. So you figure we've got, these lovely little jugular veins, but we also have this thing in the back of our head, that spinal column thing. There's a few different areas in which we get the major supply of blood to our brain. And if one or more of those pathways is impeded, it can cause literal brain death. Can you restart it? In some cases, yes. In other cases, it's too severe or there's too much damage done. Some have thought that shocking the brain, and this was years ago, found that by shocking the brain or shocking the system, it was enough to dislodge whatever was causing a blockage in order to get it to flow the way it was supposed to. But that can also cause problems where, say you have, a sand spur in an artery that is just kind of chugging along doing its thing, and then you shock it, it's going hurrah boys in your brain. So now it's pinging off of all kinds of stuff and breaking off, and now you've got multiple blood clots running around in your brain, which can cause a series of aneurysms and can cause multiple strokes, one after the other. So that's not always a good thing. Sometimes they use medications to treat strokes where they use chemical compounds to get your body to be like, oh, well, that don't belong here. And your body goes and attacks it and treats it like a virus so that your body can break it down and reabsorb it. That's usually what they do. In my case, I ended up having some pretty radical treatments for mine back in the day. And I will get into that when I talk about my part of the journey. But just to give you some general breakdowns, usually they can treat it with medication. Sometimes simple things as like IV fluids can flush your system enough that you get enough blood pumping and enough blood moving that your body can just shove it out of the way. And in that process, it kind of like breaks it down into smaller chunks so that it's not as big, so it's not causing the blockage, if I'm making sense to you. So, okay, getting into my friend Amanda. Now, I wrote this out just like I would explain it to somebody, so to be honest, I'm just going to read it, because this is exactly how I would explain it to somebody else, and the same thing goes with my story. Instead of me trying to remember details. Sometimes those things are hard for me to talk about, and it can cause my brain to kind of wander. So this is what I put about Amanda. So my friend Amanda has been going through a lot lately with her health. I already said that. From her knee surgery to a sinus vein clot, not an aneurysm, to a rare blood disorder, to what they thought was vertigo. And for those that don't know, vertigo is usually a equilibrium issue. Equilibriums being the fluid inside your ears. Your ears have like an eardrum, and inside there's fluid, which is what sound reverberates off of, that causes your auditory responses. Like you can hear from those sound waves bouncing off of things. When the fluid in your ear is affected and either is misaligned or one side has more than the other, that can cause what is called vertigo, where you could be standing upright and everything looks horizontal, which is bad. Or you could be horizontal and everything looks like it's vertical, which is also bad. It causes lightheadedness, dizziness, fainting spells. It causes confusion, loss of vision. It can even affect your sense of smell, which is kind of out there if you ask me. But when, and to some extent, vertigo and strokes are kind of similar. And we'll get into that when we get into like breaking down what they are, what the symptoms are, what people go through, that kind of thing. So, again, equilibrium. You can have vertigo from like a sinus infection, because again, your ear, nose, and throat are all tied together. So pressure in your sinus cavity can cause the fluid in your ears to either increase or decrease. The lining of the mucous membranes in your ears can also swell, again causing an imbalance in your fluid in your inner ear. So that can also cause vertigo. Colds, flus, allergies, things like that also cause vertigo to an extent. So if you ever like get up and you get up too quick and like sometimes your vision goes black and you're like, oh, and you're like, oh shit, that's like a mild symptom of vertigo. So that like you stood up too quick symptom it's like what somebody with vertigo would normally go through on a very, very mild scale. That's like a small drop in the bucket compared to what most people go through with vertigo. Okay, so now that I've got that diatribe done, what they thought with her was vertigo was actually a stroke. I said, so I decided to ask her more information about her condition, and hopefully this information can help another person be mindful and pay attention to their body. Listening to your body before you listen to anybody else, be it a doctor or a friend or a family member, can be key. And I will get into that later. Her experience with a stroke is completely different from mine, and it's a whole different ballpark from what I went through. Similar symptoms, and some, well, there's a few things that are similar. I said, you will find with strokes that is commonly the case where, be it man, woman, child, male, ages, strokes are different from one person to another. So, the dog was trying to eat the mail lady. I had let her out before I came in to record. Which is okay. Let me know there was mail out there. So, from one person to another, it's going to be different. The symptoms might be similar, but nobody is going to experience the same thing due to the fact that there are multiple different types of strokes. And if you're male or female genetically, that also plays a huge factor in what your symptoms could potentially be for a stroke victim. And also treatment measures and stuff like that, again, depends on the type of stroke that you've had. And again, genetically, if you are male or female, you're going to have different treatment options, different treatment plans, different signs, different symptoms. And when I say genetically, I am excluding the fact that, I'm female. I was born female. I'm genetically female. It says female on my birth certificate. But if I was to transition to be male, which would be female to male, if I was to have a stroke while on testosterone and after transitioning, genetically I'm still a female. So my body is going to do stroke symptoms like a female versus a male, even though, say, I had been on hormones for a number of years. I had had necessary surgeries to remove certain aspects of my female origin. Going through surgical procedures to remove everything female about me, potentially, like your ovaries, your uterus, your breasts, things like that. Your genetics, your DNA is still female, even though you've removed those things, and you're pumping your body full of testosterone so that it counteracts your estrogen. It doesn't necessarily mean you're male when it comes to talking about strokes, because a stroke to a genetic male is going to be completely different to a male to female transition stroke, because their genetic breakdown is female. So I'm not trying to like say that male and female are like different when it comes to, like, take my mom for instance. My mom is a male to female trans person. If she was to have a stroke, and at her age it's possible, she would stroke like a man because genetically she was born male. So, taking that into consideration, I would look for signs and symptoms of a stroke for the male aspect, not the female aspect. She's a woman. She's lived as a woman for more than 20 years. I've only known her as a woman. I only see her as a woman. But that doesn't mean that her genetics are female. They're not. So leave the PC stuff out of this. This is medical stuff that we're talking about. So it's needing to get down to literally your DNA. Your DNA technically is still the sex that you were assigned at birth, no matter what documentation that you currently have now. It means that what you were born as, unless you are a hermaphrodite or somebody that has both male and female genomes in your system constantly, where your body doesn't know if it's one or the other, or has body parts that are of both, your body, your DNA, your makeup, your the way that your body reacts to things is going to be a little bit different. Yes, granted, it's going to be a little bit different because you have been taking hormones, and that does factor in a little bit, but for the most part, your DNA thinks it's male. So your stroke is going to react like the stroke victim of a male person. So just want to be as blatantly clear as possible on that subject. I've probably beat a dead horse. So here's my cup for the day. Don't come for me about being transphobic or BS, because I'll just have my mom talk to you. You won't have fun. Okay, now that my diatribe is out of the way. Now, Amanda had what is called a cerebellar stroke. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I didn't know what the hell it was. I had never even heard of it. So I had to look it up. What is a cerebellar stroke? And it's Cerebellar. A cerebellar stroke is one of the less common types of strokes. It occurs when a blood vessel is blocked or bleeding, and at this time she had been dealing with a sinus vein clot, not an artery, but a vein, causing complete interruption to a portion of the cerebellum, which is, we've got different quadrants to our brain. Okay, so, and if I can, I will stick a picture of a brain on the screen. This type of stroke typically affects one side or a section of the cerebellum. This is also referred to as cerebellar stroke syndrome. The cerebellum is a portion of the brain that controls movement and maintains balance, again, which is where the symptoms of vertigo come in. It is located in the back of your brain at the bottom. It has a symmetrical left and a right side. Each side controls coordination and movement for the corresponding side of your body. If I'm not mistaken, it's the one, if you feel at the back of your head, there's a little upside down V, or you got an A on the back of your head. It's underneath, on either side of that V shape. So it's going to be right there where that little V part is at the very base of your scalp. Hopefully that helps. Again, I'll stick a picture on the screen while editing. It says there are a number of blood vessels that can feed the cerebellum. A blood clot in any of these vessels can cause a stroke. Now, a stroke is different from an aneurysm, and usually when people hear that you've got a blood clot in your brain, they automatically think aneurysm, not stroke. Two different beasts there. The vessel that reach this part of the brain are included the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, posterior inferior cerebellar artery, and superior cerebellar artery. A cerebellar stroke is a rare condition according to 2015 review. They account for less than 10% of all strokes. Left untreated, a cerebellar stroke can be life-threatening. And it will go into symptoms, and I will save that for after I go over what Amanda went through, and we will compare what they say a cerebellar stroke is symptom-wise to what Amanda went through. All right, so she had a knee surgery about 3 weeks before she was diagnosed with very bad vertigo, which was about June, July this year. They had her stop taking her blood thinners like the week before her knee surgery because she has a rare blood clotting disorder. And to be honest, I think that that is what caused all of this bullshit. I think that that domino effect of her being off the blood thinners and then having the knee surgery is what caused not only the blood clot that she had, but it caused the stroke as well. So that was not cool. So they diagnosed her with a chronic right side cerebellar stroke. So again, right side affecting the right side of your body, because as I read in the article, the cerebellum is again motor and movement kind of function. So it's going to affect, you know, this kind of thing. She also told me this morning that they don't think that her blood thinner is working anymore, the one that she's been taking for the longest time. She has a rare clotting disorder called prothrombin genetic mutation for factor II deficiency. So if you've ever gone to a doctor and they order a CBC and differential, they're going to ask for a PTT, which is called a prothrombin time. What that does is they put your blood in a oh, my brain just died. Hello. They put your blood vial in a machine and it spins it. And when it stops, they pull it out, they put it on a slide, they look at it under a microscope, and they look to see how fast it takes once they put a drop of clotting agent on the slide. They look to see how fast of a reaction your blood is to clotting when it is reactive to said chemical. A PTT is usually done when you have like things like anemia. You get bumped, and next thing you know, you have a huge welt. Anybody that has any type of blood clot or has had blood clots, anybody who's on birth control pills or any type of birth control type substance like Depo, the Norplant, whatever, the intrauterine ones, anything that you were taking that give you a progesterone or estrogen type ingredient into your body that keeps your body thinking that it's already pregnant, so you don't need to get pregnant kind of thing. If you're taking any type of pregnancy prevention steps minus a condom, or something that you have to apply like after or during or before the fact, they're going to run a PTT on you to check and see how fast your blood clots. So you want me to talk about that stuff at another time? I can. I also have a blood clotting disorder, but mine isn't this bad. This is a pretty rare genetic disorder that she has. So she's a special little flower. She's her own little snowflake, and we love her for it. So I will leave links to the genetic mutation down below, and I will read information about that in just a minute after I go through her symptoms. Let's see. She was diagnosed with it in 1996, and she knows that her paternal aunt has it, and her dad is a genetic carrier for it, which is how she got it. So she can say, "Thanks, Dad," just like I do every time I get comments about my nose. I'm like, "Thanks, Dad. This came from him." Okay, so symptoms. She suffered with a little bit of right-sided numbness, common with strokes. You're going to have numbness and tingling. And it was very brief, she said. It didn't last very long. She was having various emotional mood swings, and they were pretty severe. So she would go from like happy and content and bubbly and her normal personable self to angry and disturbed and upset and irritated, like a drop of the hat. Like she would be perfectly fine one minute and ripping your head off the next. She was having nausea, and I just found a typo. Let me correct my error here real quick. She was also having vomiting, lack of like interest in food, which I can understand. If you're nauseous, you're not going to want to eat anyways. She was lightheaded. She started getting like headaches very bad in the back part of her brain. And she said that it was worse than any migraine that she's ever had. Like she was telling me that she was suffering from migraines, and I'm like, are you sure? And then of course that's when they found the damn sinus vein. So we'll get there. She also had vision issues that would come and go, and her hearing would go in and out. So like when I talked about vertigo, where your vision comes in and out, it's like when you stand up too quick and you lose your vision. Your hearing goes in and out because, again, your equilibrium is messed up and the fluid in your ears has moved and shifted so that it's not equalized like it should be. So those are where the doctor was getting her like vertigo symptoms. And now vertigo can also cause nausea and vomiting, but normally, and from my own personal experience with vertigo, you don't have weakness and numbness and tingling and mood swings from that. Now, according to Healthline, they say the symptoms can happen suddenly. They can be mistaken for other conditions, and it says common symptoms of this cerebral stroke are dizziness, headaches, nausea, vomiting, double vision, and tremors. More visible symptoms of a cerebellar stroke may include vertigo, poor coordination, abnormal reflexes, difficulty swallowing, difficulty speaking or slurred speech, which with most strokes, that's common, uncontrollable eye movement, and unconsciousness, which is something that she also had. But I got into that too. If left untreated, a cerebellar stroke can cause your brain to swell or bleed. These complications can lead to further damage to your cerebellum and other areas of your brain. If a cerebellar stroke affects your brain, your breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure could also be affected. And it goes into like what could cause it and that kind of thing. We already know what causes them. They're caused by blood clots. Simplest thing that I can say. And this is going to be a really long video because the first part was already 11 minutes before I went out and got mail, and I'm already at 16 minutes. So yeah, buckle your seatbelts. I mean, I'll speed it up to 1.2 times so that I'm talking a little bit faster, but all right. So her first diagnosis was vertigo, and it was incorrect. I already discussed that. The first stroke probably happened in July. They also said that dehydration and other things can trigger this type of stroke. It is an uncommon form of stroke. After the vertigo diagnosis, and this is one thing I did talk about. Her husband came home one day and found her passed out on the floor and rushed her to the hospital. And that's when they found her sinus vein. It was a blood clot in her right sinus vein. So a lot of the things that they're finding are all right side affected. And usually with a stroke victim that is female in genetic makeup, you're going to find that the right side of the body is affected versus a male who's usually affected on the left side of the body. So those are like not standard practice, right versus left, but more often than not, you're going to find women have strokes on the right side and men have strokes on the left side. I must just be weird. Let's see. Oh, and had the clot been in an artery, it would have been considered an aneurysm. And they gave her heparin to shrink it, and her body reabsorbed it. So far, that blood clot is finito. She said since her symptoms first began, she's had severe anxiety. One minute you think that you're fine, the next minute you can't do anything yourself. Been there, done that. This can be very draining both mentally and physically, and having to rely on others can be a huge hit to the self-esteem. It has affected her right side, and she has to walk with a crutch. And she can't go very far without having to stop. And she's out of breath and winded and tired and worn out. And I can understand. And you know, the bad part is she loves to cosplay, and she's really big into it, and they're doing a whole bunch of conventions right now and Comic-Cons, and she wants to go, and all her friends are going, and she can't go because she goes a couple of feet and needs a nap. So that's not good. And the fact that she's very active in those things and she can't go and do them also has a pretty strong pull on her mental state and the anxiety that she feels and the stress and just the frustration of it all about not being able to go and do the things that she wants to do when she wants to do it because her body won't let her. Girl, I feel you. I've been there. I have had temper tantrums because my leg wouldn't work, or my hand, or both. Let's see. She says that she goes from happy one minute to frustrated and angry the next, and I'll explain more about what that means when I talk about my story. She said she gets tired easily and she sleeps a lot, but it seems like she can't get enough sleep. And sometimes she goes and she lays down, but she's not tired, but she's like sleepy. It's kind of like you yawn and you yawn and you yawn and you yawn and you yawn, which is a lack of oxygen to your brain, to be honest. When you yawn, that's what that means. It means you need to go because your brain needs fuel. But you figure when you're tired, you're not breathing as deeply as you normally would. So that's why you yawn to refuel your brain. And then you go to bed and you're like, ping! And you're like, no, motherfucker, I want to go to sleep. No. And you're like, okay, let's go. Let's go. I'm like, no, shut up. Go to sleep. I'm tired. But you lay there and you lay there and you lay there. Hello? I don't know what that was. And? Emma Brew. That was odd. I think I shrunk again. That's okay, I'm comfortable. So the laying down aspect and trying to relax and getting comfortable and just going, yeah. And you're like ready to drift off to sleep and your brain's like, hey, come on, let's go, let's do that. And you're like, okay. That's what she's dealing with, and trust me, I do this regularly. So yeah, I know exactly what she's going through and how frustrated she is. But she thinks that she has been able to get some sleep, so it's not like she's not getting any sleep. And the more sleep she gets, she feels that it's her body's way of trying to heal her brain right now, which is awesome. And she said, I think that it's really cool. And she is a sleep tech. So people that are sleep techs usually do sleep studies for various neurological conditions. And I know I had one done when I was going through multiple seizures a day, which I will talk about in a few seconds when I get into my story. Really quickly, I wanted to go over her genetic clotting disorder. Prothrombin, and it's actually G20210 mutation. It is called a factor 2 mutation. It is a genetic condition that causes an increase in the likelihood of your blood forming the blood. Boy, I just cannot freaking talk. Likelihood of your blood forming dangerous blood clots. An individual makes the prothrombin, also called the factor 2 protein, that helps blood clot. However, there are certain individuals who have a DNA mutation in that gene used to make prothrombin, also called prothrombin G20210A, or the factor 2 mutation. They are said to have inherited thrombophilia, a clotting disorder called prothrombin, and then again the number again, I ain't going to read it again. When this occurs, they make too much of the prothrombin protein, which is what your blood uses to clot. People with hemophilia do not have enough prothrombin. Normally, the prothrombin protein is produced to help the blood clot and is produced in greater amounts after the blood vessel is damaged. So usually, like, if you stub your toe and your toenail starts to bleed, that is when your body's going to pump PTT or PT in your system, and it's going to like go rushing to your toe so that it stops the bleeding at the affected area. People that have the mutation produce twice as much protein than normal. And since there's more protein in the blood, it increases the tendency to form a blood clot. And their body is like constantly making it. So it's not like, you know, when you turn the faucet on, or AKA you get cut and you start to bleed, where all of a sudden, you know, it will taper off. It'll like slow the flow of the blood by forming and dying the cells that form on it and then end up dying, which causes a scab. But what it does is their body's constantly producing it all the time. And so instead of it only appearing when you need it, you get it all the time, which can cause problems. So those suckers are just kind of bumping around going, hey, to every white, red, and yellow blood cell that you've got. And no, you don't have yellow blood cells, but you know, hey, if you thought you did for a second, gotcha. Okay. I don't know. We're at 24 minutes. So I think I'm going to end this right here, and I'm going to go ahead and record my part of it, which will be next. So this is part 1, episode 1, part 1. So this, I will record episode 1, part 2. In just a moment. So if you see this again, you understand. So hopefully this was helpful. I will leave the links to everything listed down below, and part 2 I will also link. I did make a whole new playlist for this, so I will leave that linked down below as well. And hopefully this is helpful to others. When I get into my story in part 2, it might be a little hard for me to talk about, but I think what caused my stroke is uncommon. Now, Amanda's got me beat because hers is rare, but mine's uncommon because I wouldn't have naturally had one had it not been for extenuating circumstances. So if you're interested to hear about why I had a stroke and what caused mine and all the fun tidbits of that, then stay tuned for part 2 of episode 1, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. Have a great day or night, wherever you are. Hopefully you learned something. Leave your comments down below. Give this video a like. Bye.